I was just starting out Coco Flip as a business, and I wanted to produce a light as the first project, and this form kept coming out in the sketchbook. That idea of contrasting the aluminium with the timber and having sort of a seamless form just evolved, and took it into 3D model, and from there it was the challenge of finding the right people to make it. That in many ways was more challenging than the design. It was an unknown world to me of where to start looking. We produced every component completely separately, so it's finding a skilled craftsman, I suppose, in each different discipline. Also just being a completely new business and getting people to take you seriously and believe that this is not just a uni project or a one-off folly. It's it's a product that we want to develop and sell.
Well, it's been 4 years now that Kate's been coming. We've probably in that time made close to 2,000 lamps. My job's to give Kate what she wants and to make her design, practical for production. And it often throws up challenges, and that makes it interesting for us too, because we've got to be creative ourselves to work out how to do certain things, because wood has its limitations, and a lot of designers probably don't understand that the grain goes in certain ways and there's only certain things you can do with it, and that imposes restrictions on designs, I suppose. And so when that occurs, we have to consult with the designer and maybe change things, tweak things a little bit.
So as a sample, as a visual representation of what you could expect, we just made the sample out of gelatine. And from there we did various samples. I mean, we've gone through the American oak, the American ash, and the different qualities all together between all three.
So I think we selected the Victorian ash in the end, primarily because it's a local timber, but also it has the right aesthetic. It's a light to mid tone of timber. It's got a really nice even grain.
It's everything you wanted from it, and it's just an availability matter. I mean, we'll get a pack of timber from one supplier and it'll be all sort of that silvery white colour, and then you'll get the next pack and it'll all be that dark red colour. You really can't pick or choose, it's just a matter of dealing with the material as it comes.
So from the original 2D drawings that I supplied to these guys, the shape, obviously when you get it into a 3D form, looks different.
Yeah, there's no way of doing it otherwise, really.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of refining from the eye. I think there's a little bulge here. There was also just a few different iterations of the step here. The aluminium does actually change in size in the different temperatures, so there needs to be enough tolerance so that it can expand and contract. This also acts to cover up the powder coating line in the aluminium, so it needed to be thick enough to do that, but not too thick so that the aluminium would lift up.
Yeah, that's right.
We've done lots of good challenges. It was a little off-putting to begin with, just the cost factor of getting an item like this produced in Melbourne. We had no idea what people would spend on it in the end, so to have components costing quite huge sums of money for a small business was quite frightening, but we took a punt.
Our initial thoughts were that it's going to be quite interesting but quite difficult to produce. The first 2 or 3 runs were very hit and miss, and you promised the customer an end result, and she's obviously put a lot of money and time into tooling and then other processes, and if we've got the main thing, the shade, and we can't produce it, it gets a little bit frustrating. You have to just battle through that, and quite often there's no rules, it's just experience and a little bit of trial and error. So even till today, we've refined it as much as we can, but there's still an element of loss, and each component takes an hour to get to that last operation, and then you add the material on. It's a big loss when your last little trimming operation, the thing can be in the bin.
We were experiencing some dents here, and if that gets too thin, I guess. Yeah.
And that pretty much won't happen anymore because at the material, but also the roller, I've changed. I'll just get one. Yeah, we've been using a softer roller, and it's a lot user friendly on the aluminium. But what I've noticed is it opens the grain, and that's where we're getting that grain and those big ears.
Yeah.
So we've gone back to the hardened metal roller now.
Yeah, cool.
And we're getting a lot more consistency up, less ears on the top edge. Yeah. Usually you might run a product for 12 months and then it just sort of slowly dies off because another new shape's coming, another new concept, and they come and go out of popularity. But absolutely the opposite's happened. We're seeing more and more orders. So yeah, it's really been a really bonus to our business, and being a small lighting manufacturer, she's crept into our top 10 customer lists, which is a fantastic effort for Kate.
It's all happening at once here.
The hanging system was one of the challenges along the way that held things up, working out a safe way to hang an 8-kilogram pendant light from the ceiling. We spent quite a lot of time playing with different ideas and eventually came up with a system of using a small pin, which is actually intended as a boat engine pin. It was the perfect size and it's really, really strong. So we use that and make it into a crimped suspension system with a steel wire. So the production quantities have increased quite organically. To begin with, we were just producing in batches of 10 at a time, and obviously it would take longer for those to sell. And as the demand increased, we've just increased the production quantities. We still usually just produce 20 of the cocoa pendants at a time, but the runs are a bit more consistent, and generally we order the products and then they usually sell before we get them.
Yeah, copy that one.
It's a nice table, isn't it? Having the right photographs were really important in promoting the product from early on, approaching blogs and press and retailers as well. And so I put quite a lot of effort into finding a photographer I wanted to work with, and he took some really great shots. It's really interesting to see the types of projects that the Coco Pendant gets selected for. If it's selected by really good architects that I respect in projects that I'm proud to be associated with, it's really a great feeling.
It was quite different to a lot of other lights on the market, and I'm always looking for lights. I think pendant lights really make a space. If you hang them low, and they can create a sort of a space within a larger space. We wanted the house to be quite simple and elegant, so a lot of the conversation was about materiality rather than big feature walls or bright colours. So good quality materials and fittings that kind of had their own warmth. Quality is about materials that last. I think there's also something about picking something that's timeless. It's not necessarily about a fashionable thing or a style, but about just good, honest things that are beautiful.
It feels great to see the product out there in the world. It's a really good feeling to be validated in that way, I suppose, and it's really nice when you hear directly from customers who write you a little email and say, we've put it up and we love it. It's really lovely to get that feedback and see people enjoying it. Starting out, it's good just to not know what you're doing, because otherwise you probably wouldn't do it. And in some ways, you know, it's more authentic and you probably produce more interesting work when you're doing things that way as well. It's not like you've researched the whole market and done an analysis where this exact thing is going to work, and it's just, you know, you go with your heart and you do it because you love it, and I think people respond to that